Hey guys, back again for the third video in the tutorial series. This time we're going to be looking at the mid basses. It's quite tricky to get your head around mid basses. It takes a lot of experience, a lot of time practicing. There's lots of variables, there's lots of ways to go around doing them. Lots of different types of MIDI patterns you can do, different sounds. I'm going to just quickly go through this track that we're working on and just do a basic outline of the mid bass, maybe tweak it later on in the future. Without further ado guys, let's go. Right guys, so if you remember from last video, we did a kick and bass. So let's have a little listen what we had. Very simple kick and sub bass. Nice groove. So there's two main things I would say when considering reducing the trance mid bass. Now, the first one is the tone. The second one is the length of the mid bass. With the tone, I mean, are you going to have lots of high end in your mid basses? Or is it going to be a bit of a darker mid bass? Throw a few examples up now to show you what I mean about the differences. So you see what I mean? In this track, we're going to go for more of a higher, floaty mid bass because that goes with the reference track. So it's going to be more uplifting. The second thing, what I mean by the notes, the note length, is the notes going to be really short in like 16 notes, or they're going to be longer notes, more progressive style trance. I'm going to again stick with the shorter notes, so it has a little bit more drive, a little bit clickiness nearly, if that makes sense. This video is the third time I'm having a go. I've already produced the mid bass in my previous attempts. Quickly show you a little reel of me flying through that as much as I can. I'll speed it up really quickly to show you that I actually made this. Right, so I may as well show you exactly how I produced the individual parts now after showing you that little video. What I did, it was split into 3 different types of mid basses. Now, when it comes to trance, more isn't necessarily better, but if you get a bit more depth in your mid bass, different layers of the mid bass doing different jobs, it can generally sound a fuller sound. I've done 3 here. I've heard people are doing like 6 mid basses. I don't think that's necessary. For me, 3 or 4 is a nice sweet spot. So let's have a little listen. We'll start off, I think I've got the lower mid bass here. Yep. Higher mid bass here, and then another high mid bass there. Those 3 mid basses together sound like this. Now bear with me because I have got process on, but I'll get to that later. So let's have a little look at the MIDI files. So as I said, I've got the MIDI in 16th notes, so there's 4 for every beat. Some people, I do this often as well, you don't need to have the first note in the beat because generally the kick's going to go here. When you do take this out, it sounds very tripletty. When I say that is the 16th notes are in triplets. It has the bounce, but if you have the extra 16th note at the start, it gives you a bit more flexibility when you use an LFO tool, just in case you want to leave a little bit of the mid bass in on the kick. So this is what it sounds like. You can see what I mean though with the first little mid bass triplet still in, the 16th note still in, it gives a little bit more bounce. So I'm going to follow the same key note as the sub, so it's F here. Let's have a look at the next bass. This follows exactly the same, but I've had an octave higher because I wanted to accompany the lower frequencies with a bit more higher frequencies in this one. Lovely. And the last one is again a higher bass. Now, the only difference I've done here is I've tuned a couple of notes an octave up just to give it a little bit of more rhythm. Another little thing you can do if you want, you can change the velocity of the notes. First couple of 16th notes, I've lowered the velocity a little bit, and then the second ones I've emphasized them a bit more. So it just shows on the offbeat here, where my arrow, my cursor is, it just brings the volume up a bit more. So let's have a listen to the kick and sub. Okay, so let's have a look at the production of the sounds. As I was mentioning, I wanted short sounds, okay? To get a short sound in Spire or any DAW, you look at the ADSR. So if you look at envelope 1 here, the decay is really quite low and there's no sustain whatsoever. So that means the note's going to trigger quickly, then decay off quickly. So there's no sustain of it, so it makes it just a quick note. So let's have a listen to what it sounds like that. Now, if I increase the sustain, it does sound a bit, the note sounds fuller, but that's because I've got something else as well. So keep the sustain down. I've got the cutoff now, this ADSL routed to the cutoff. Now what's going on with the filters, it's got no filter. So normally without anything routed, you would have no sound coming out because the filter's taken out all of the frequency down to pretty much 0 hertz, yeah? But what the filter's showing here, when the sound starts, the decay of the sound, the cutoff will jump up dead quickly, and then it'll go back down very quickly as well. So it'll sound like this, clicky. Without it, nothing. A little bit. That's generally just how you get the clickiness of a sound. Now, it doesn't really matter how you program your other the rest of your bass line. You can have sawtooth. I'd stay away from sine. So sawtooth and square are the most common types you would do on the oscillators. But for example, on this one, I'm using FM synthesis, which I did a video previously about it, but I haven't went too much into detail. But just for now, I'm using FM on this one. Again, FM, I like to use FM a lot, as you can tell. But I think this one is a more generic-y, yeah. So this sound is actually, well, it's a saw, but it also has a square wave morphed into a saw bit. This is a preset I picked actually from, I think, the High Life bank. Sounded nice. I liked it. You don't have to go and make every single preset from scratch. If it fits with your track, use it. Why not? As long as you're not using the same things as everyone else, so it sounds completely generic anyway. But yep, as you can see, sustain's pulled down quite a bit. Exactly same cut off here on the filter's high, with the a little bit sustain, and the main filter all the way down. Simple. Spot on. Let's have a little look at the processing. So, as I mentioned in my first video, I have all my mid basses routed to a bass bus here, okay? And the bass bus then goes to the master. The reason is just so I can apply the same effect on all 3 of them at the same time. Now, generally, on the separate buses for the mid basses, I don't do much processing. The most important, in my opinion, is leveling. So making sure the volumes are right in your mix. Now, there's no clear answer for this. You just have to listen and practice. In general, 99 out of 100, you want your mid bass a lot quieter than your kick. I wouldn't put a number on it, but you would want it quieter. So what I've got is just simply EQ taken off the bottom on all of them. This 1, 2, 3. Now the whole point of that is so the sub has room to breathe, so there's not frequencies jumping on top of each other, which will make the mix down awful. It gives us more headroom to mix later on. I'll go through what headroom is later on when I do the mixing, when I finish the track. Okay, so the bass bus. Now what I've got first of all is, again, I've got EQ just to cut off all the low end to make sure it's off. I've got it at about 125 hertz, but if I'm completely honest, it's personal preference where you cut the bass off. If it sounds good in your mix and it sounds good on speakers, and your mate you sent it to said it sounds fine on their speakers and your headphones, whatever, leave it, it's fine, okay? I see a lot of people cut like right up to 500, and I think it just takes out the whole body of the mid bass and it takes the drive out. You need some lower mids to high bass. So what I've done after there, I've added some character. So all this does, it's a bit of saturation on the top end of the basses. I probably wouldn't even use this on a darker mid bass, but this brings out the highs. Now you can get around this similar results by using some EQ at around probably about 2000 hertz. Just bring it out a bit. Don't go overboard because it'll just destroy the sound and destroy the tone of the sound. So if you bring out too much highs, it'll start to emphasize, the mid bass will be more emphasized or high end than the mid, so it'll just really mess up your tone of the sound. What I've done next is quite important actually. You've got a choice now. Do you compress all of the sounds or squash all of the sounds after the processing or before? Now what I've done here is I've did the compression before reverb. Now, if you, as I said, if you added the compression after the reverb would be squashed down as well, so the dynamic range would be reduced with the reverb. So what I've wanted to do is get the raw sound of the mid bass, compress that first, then add effects. If further compression of the effects need to be done in the future, I'll do that as well. I have, oh, bit of a bug. There we go. So I've added about 5-6 dBs of compression. A late attack, so the transients are kept. Quickish release. So basically, when I'm doing a higher attack, the end of the mid bass is pushed up without destroying the transients, so the start clickiness of the mid bass. Make sure you don't just add it on, make it go louder by increasing the makeup gain and go, oh, that sounds better. Make sure you're checking the leveling before and after. So 21 here. I turn it off. Probably added like 1 or 1.5 dB, but it still sounds a lot thicker than it did before. I then added some reverb on after, very small amount of it. Now this is probably one of my issues. I hate adding too much reverb because in the mix down it will just you really struggle to mix it down. The reverb is getting sidechained. Now that's another thing. I've added the reverb before the LFO sidechaining tool, so it'll duck the mid bass as well as the reverb. Okay, so it's stuck in the reverb and the mid bass. Now you can't have it after, you can have it before, you can have it on both if you want. That's what I've done here. Quickly, I did a little bit of EQing. There's a couple of resonant frequencies, so what I mean they're ringing frequencies. Good way to see where they are. Get a really thin cue and go. As you can see, there weren't really any resonant frequencies there. There's a few issues, but I could deal with that another time. It's just very minor. If you hear some cracking and popping from the, sorry about that, it's randomly just started happening in OBS. I'll have to check why it's doing that, because the CPU's not an issue. It's fine, just randomly spiking. We'll have to check. I'll have to see what that is for next time. Okay, moving on. So as I mentioned, we have the LFO tool. What I've done here on the LFO tool, I have ducked the sound where the kick is here on the first triplet. I've left a little bit of the triplet in still, as you can see here. Now, if you don't know how to get this waveform, you press scope and the waveform will come behind it. As you can see, I've left a bit of the triplet there, but I drop the volume very quickly, then break it back up again. So you still get that bouncy rolling bass line feel. So that's the way I do it. I messed about with that. There's no one preset. This is just me messing about with it until it sounds right. Don't just whack a preset and go, that's fine. Have a mess about with it until it sounds right for that track. Don't just throw presets on. Doesn't always work all the time. After I've done that, I've wanted an extra bit of reverb on the mid bass, which is not getting sidechained. So I've sent this through to a send bus, okay? For a send reverb and a send delay. All this is, I've just changed the color, added delay on one and added a reverb on one. The difference is I've added it 100% wet on the send, so I only want the wet signal from the reverbs and the delay to come onto the sound. If I'm adding some of the original signal, I'm just doubling up the original sound. I just want reverb on, and then what you can do is adjust the reverb and the delay to how much you want. So I've only got a very minute amount of it on, just to give it a bit more air, but I don't want to give it too much because I'm going to have other elements with more air and delay on later on, and I don't want the mid bass to steal all of the room in the mix. But no guys, that is the mid bass. I would say the main place where you need to really practice on is getting the correct sounds, the correct attack of the sounds in the mid bass to make sure it has a trance feel. And you can't just develop that. That's practice. You can't just get it overnight. You have to practice and practice and practice different presets until it's right. But guys, no, hopefully you've picked something up from the video. Next time I'm going to be looking at percussion. One of my favorites actually. I quite like doing percussion. So we're going to get a bit of a groove. We're going to have a kick, sub bass, mid bass, percussion. So hopefully we get the percussion done from next episode. See you guys there. See you later. Bye.